What's the most important element of fantasy fiction? You've got setting, you've got character, you've got plot, but those are important in any kind of fiction, not just fantasy. So what is it that sets fantasy apart from everything else? Is it the swords? Fantasy has swords. The historical narrative of Henry IV is not fantasy. What sets fantasy apart from everything else is this. Not the one. Magic. Magic is what makes and breaks our genre. And if you want to do fantasy right, you gotta know how to do magic. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Book Cafe, YouTube channel where we review books, talk fantasy, and eventually review authors. I know I keep saying that, but I promise it's coming. I'm actually setting one up. If you're new here, consider subscribing, and if you're a veteran, welcome back, and welcome to the writer's table. Today, we're talking about magic. Have you ever watched a fantasy or science fiction movie that's so inconsistent that you just find yourself thinking, they can't just make stuff up, can they? Even though you know that it's fiction, and they can. Magic's made up, it's the nature of it. It doesn't exist in the real world. No matter how many Arabian lamps I find, I will never have a talking penguin. This I have come to accept. But, see, like the real world, fiction has to operate on rules. It's just that the rules of fiction are really different. So yes, you could write a story with an omnipotent god wizard who solves everything for everyone forever, but you're not going to get much traction there. If you want to read that, I suggest the New Testament. Like reality, magic has to have rules. Not necessarily the magic itself, but how you, the writer, use it. So today we're going to talk about some of those rules. We're going to talk about how magic works in fiction, and how it doesn't. Warning, there's minor spoilers ahead for the second and third seasons of Avatar: The Last Airbender, or Avatar: The Legend of Aang if you're overseas. So if you intend to go into that show unspoiled, watch it first, then come back to this video. Now, some of you are probably thinking, is this guy seriously going to try and explain how Gandalf's magic works? And the answer is no. Even if there is an actual answer to the exact rules of Gandalf's magic, and having thumbed through the Silmarillion, I don't think there is, codifying Gandalf isn't the point. The rules of magic don't necessarily apply to how the characters use it, but rather how the author does. Which leads us to Sanderson's first law of magic. The reader's understanding of how the magic functions in-universe is directly proportional to the number of plot problems the author can use it to solve. It's a complicated concept, so let's start by talking about Gandalf. What can Gandalf do with his magic? It's difficult to say. The list is kind of weird. We don't know his full capabilities. He's got the fireworks, some kind of telekinesis, and ill-defined ability to manipulate light. His magical powers are never exactly explained, and there is a reason for that. Gandalf is not supposed to be understood. Taking it further, we don't know how the ring wraiths work. We don't know what they can do, and in most cases, we don't know what they're vulnerable to. I'd explain this with an old filmmaker's trick. Nothing is scarier than silence. Sometimes it's better to let the reader's mind do all the work for you, because whatever they come up with will be 100 times scarier or more powerful than anything you could write. This is why Cthulhu works so well. It's because we don't understand it. It's so far beyond us that it's explicitly terrifying. And it's the same with the Nazgul. We may know what they are, but we don't understand them. And that makes them scary. And we may know what Gandalf is, but we don't understand him. And we don't understand his magic, which makes it so much bigger than us. However, because we don't understand his magic, it has limited uses. There's a reason why Gandalf doesn't just teleport Frodo into Mount Doom, or call up a wave of magma to destroy all of the orcs. Because the reader doesn't understand Gandalf's power, the author has to restrict it, so that it doesn't break the story. If Gandalf were to arrive at the Battle of Helm's Deep and suddenly turn all the Uruk-hai to cheese, you would feel cheated. Unless the story had already established that that was something he could do. So because The Lord of the Rings refuses to establish what the magic can and can't do, it can't use it for story purposes. Now in the middle of this spectrum, you've got Harry Potter. You know some of the things that the magic can do, and you know some of its limitations. Wizards have to be of a certain bloodline, and the weaker ones need wands and incantations in order to do magic. And particular incantations code for particular spells. But you don't know why. So as a result, The characters can only use spells you've already seen. And if someone were to invent a new one, for instance, suddenly turning Hogwarts into a block of cheese, if you can't tell, I'm kind of hungry, it would feel weird because it doesn't seem to fit within the rules that they've established. So how does an author allow magic to innovate and solve plot problems? For that, we look at Avatar: The Last Airbender's Toph Beifong. For those of you who haven't seen the show and don't know how bending works, here's the basic summary. In the Avatar universe, Earthbenders are people who have inherited the ability to use a particular variant of Kung Fu in order to move dirt and rocks. The particularly powerful ones are able to move larger and larger masses of stone with fewer and fewer motions. But, and this is important, none of them can do anything with the other elements. No Earthbender can do anything with fire or water. And at the start, no Earthbender is capable of using their magic on metal. So, that is a very consistent set of rules, and very well defined. And because it's so well defined, it's much easier to break it. This brings us to Toph. Toph is blind. However, she has a unique ability that she learned at a very young age. She's able to use her earthbending to sense vibrations in the ground around her, and use it as a form of echolocation. As she puts it,
I see with earthbending. It's kind of like seeing with my feet.
This allows her omnidirectional vision as long as something is touching the ground, and furthermore, allows her to break rules in ways that other people wouldn't expect. Because she can sense earth using vibrations, she can sense dirt and stone impurities in metal, and bend those. No earthbender has been able to use their power on metal, but because Toph realizes that there's earth in it, she's able to adapt the power that we already know how it works to a wider range of activities. This would seem to violate the already established rules, but in fact it doesn't. And this leads to another thing. Later on in the sequel series, we find out that the more pure a metal is, the more difficult it is to affect. Which then leads into the second law of magic. Limitations are more interesting than abilities. So let's say there's a hero who has the ability to turn people into cheese, anywhere in the world, however he wants. The main villain is threatening his family. What does the hero do? He turns the villain into cheese. It's simple, and it's boring. So let's say, instead, that in order to turn people into cheese, the hero has to make eye contact with them. Now he has to find a way to get inside the villain's lair, find the villain himself, and look him in the eyes. Suddenly this isn't one action, it's a story. Again, people aren't interested in godlike characters who can do whatever they want, whenever they want. People want to see a struggle. So, your magic has to have limitations. It has to have costs. It has to have things it can't do. Now, it's easy to forget that Toph is blind, because she can see objects using her earthbender echolocation abilities. However, this has several critical weaknesses. One, Toph can't read. More than that, she can't see pictures. So when there are wanted posters up with her face on them, she doesn't know they're there.
What's this? I don't know! I mean, seriously, what's with you people? I'm blind! It's a wanted poster of you, the runaway.
Which can, and in one occasion does, lead to her being critically misinformed. Another one is that when she's not standing on dirt or stone, she's completely blind.
There it is!
That's what it will sound like when one of you spots it.
Anyone can sneak up on her anytime they want. Third, and most interesting, sand. Sand diffuses her ability to see and makes everything fuzzy. These are very interesting weaknesses for a character to have. Now, beside that, she also has the classic Earthbender weakness of, if she's deprived of her element, her magic is useless. These are all limitations that make her interesting. Each one provides a point of conflict, a challenge for her to overcome, which is far more interesting than if she were able to beat all of her enemies simply by throwing rocks at them from anywhere on the planet. In order for there to be a story, there has to be things that magic can't do. Gandalf can't teleport Frodo straight to Mount Doom. The third law, depth before breadth. This one's the trickiest, and also more of a guideline than a law. Oddly enough, Toph also provides us an example of someone doing it badly.
I see everything that you see, except I don't see like you do. I release a sonic wave from my mouth. There. I got a pretty good look at you.
That was someone attempting to do an impression of Toph Beifong. However, the sonic scream is something that no one in the universe of Avatar has ever been able to do. Moreover, it's completely unrelated to any of the other abilities. That's breadth. While Toph's ability to see actually derives from an esoteric use of the magic that already exists. Basically, it's another way of saying that you can't just make up rules as you go. Going back to our cheese hero, who I've elected to call Brian because blessed are the cheesemakers, we already know that he can only turn people into cheese through eye contact. However, it would be boring if he solved this problem by going out and learning how to throw fireballs and doing that instead. What might be more interesting is if he brought a mirror and used it to make eye contact with the villain from around a blind corner. Would that work? It depends on the magic, but that is depth. That is taking bits of the world and expanding them to their logical conclusion. So, that's the quick and dirty version of Sanderson's 3 laws of magic. To recap, first, if you want to solve plot problems with the magic, the reader has to know how it works. Second, limitations are more interesting than abilities. Imposing costs, weaknesses, and limitations make the use of magic far more interesting to the reader than if anyone can do anything whenever they want. A long ritual time is a cost. So is money. So is blood. And last, you don't necessarily need to make up new magics to solve every plot problem. See what you can do with the ones you've already made first, and the readers will thank you for it. If you follow these rules right, then you will never hear someone reading your work and saying, they can't just make up rules willy-nilly, because you will have made them consistent. That is how you make magic interesting. Thank you so much for watching this video and for playing along with my little experiment. If enough people watch this video, I'll think about making a second writer's table. If you enjoyed this, remember to click the dragon to subscribe and to like down below. Or click here to see what YouTube suggests you should watch next. Thank you for watching, thank you for being such good fans, and as always, read good fantasy.